do the submissions, right? The imagery stuff, that's the only thing that's not in there. For Unit 4, the Green Club thing hasn't been entered yet. Thank you for being so involved with your grade and knowing what's going on.
And then all I did was vocab.
I can only provide you a few minutes. Please focus. It's a big day. It's a big day because my homie Ryan is coming to Santa Barbara. Ryan's the homiest homie.
My brother's name's Ryan.
Well, my homie's name is Ryan without a B.
Show you.
I said Ryan.
Check this out. He is a glorious photographer. I have those all over my walls.
That's so cool.
Is that the same calendar?
That's last year's calendar. His third year of making all my calendars. Yeah, right? That's where I live, dude. Check it out. Like, this is where I spend all my summers. I walk and run up there all the time.
I haven't been to Yosemite in a long time.
My mom thought it was a great idea to go to Yosemite on the 4th of July.
Your mom's stupid. Sorry, just kidding.
How'd you even get there? Was it like on all the roads?
4th of July.
Oh, in July, never mind.
Bring me the correction.
Wait, I don't get it.
For 3.5?
You went on the 4th of July. It's Yosemite. You can't have fire. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
If not, you can look in the...
Okay.
Yeah, those warm-up yesterday.
I was like, gonna have a heart attack. And then I was like, oh yeah.
What is the biggest AM cohort now?
Yeah.
3 movies, and then I went to another one last week, and then
What was your what? What is your biggest age cohort? And what was the answer?
Depends.
Depends on the depends on your age structure. You have to take a look. And what's a cohort?
It's like the specific, like whatever demographic is the biggest population base. So men or women at a certain age group, whichever one's the biggest.
Awesome. You check your. I haven't checked it. Check it. I only got something just. Alright, 1 second. It shouldn't affect your grade that much. So I guess the homework plays a big part into your grade.
Unit 2, I just have one question. I don't know, but if I have more information, I could correct this. It's not that I doubt you, I just need to know details. Can you check your calendars or details? No, we can fix it. I just want to know what it is. Can you do more research on the internet? Hopefully you'll be able to find out so that it's something that's true.
I got a calendar. I got way more extra credit on my work. I got a 1.4.
Here we go. Can you figure out based on this? Unit on it? That's a good way to know. Anyway.
I have that for the last. I've always been
So movies in Unit 2, you got 1. Movies in Unit 3, you got 3.
I have 90.9.
You may be accurate.
Definitely.
Use a 4. Saw 1.
I don't really.
1.
It's so like what? Yeah.
Yeah, good try. Good try.
You know.
Yeah, whatever. Whatever.
Yeah, I don't even know if my kids do anything. What was the last chapter test unit test about? I don't know.
Give me a second.
Oh, it was about.
Hopefully I'll find out every time I put a
It's like specifications.
So it'll be a while before that gets corrected. Just keep your eye open for that. Whenever there's a grade change, I should find that corrected. If not, then you gotta tell me, hey, you forgot the correction. Who won? What? Someone said something.
My appeal worked for
It
you
was you?
before. I got my appeal worked for you before I had a 79.5.
Broke my heart.
So you live outside this?
That's like, you can almost see where I sleep there.
Vacation. I know. Dude, no. Oh, no, really. He commutes from Yosemite. Then don't say he lives there if you don't actually.
Hugo, just hit him. Just jump across the chair and hit him.
Commutes from Yosemite, dude. Every day. Who wouldn't? He does live there part of the year. Yeah, that's what I meant. Yeah.
You know Welsh.
He doesn't have a house there. He does.
He does have a house there.
Wait, is that?
When? Where? Tu casa? Maybe Tuesday or Thursday? What? It's okay.
Is that like is the last box the like ideal population, or is that like?
Oh no. I mean, not necessarily.
You think really good or not?
Come away? Yeah. Gabby, I do understand your question. So, there are things that we like about that. So things that we do like about that population, Gabby, are that population is stable. That's good. Another thing that we like about that is you don't have exceptionally high death rates, so less suffering is usually good. This part looks kind of good. That's not necessarily like ideal for everyone, but that is sort of what most people shoot for. Whether or not you're done copying. Let's talk about 6.2, and then maybe we can get a little bit to the diagram on the board. My hunch is we'll have to complete this tomorrow. How many of you have had human geography or a bio class that did demographic transition? Cool. I will later explain the diagram. But I want you to stop with the diagram. And it will remain on the board for a great many moons. Your grade has all of Unit 1, all of Unit 2, all of Unit 3, all of Unit 4, except for many of your imagery submissions. Those are piling up on my desk, and I can't seem to care about them. And green club activities... I just noticed right now, I don't think I have Unit 3 or Unit 4 in there. We should have all that data somewhere. one of these days I'll pass back papers. That's like 4 and 5. But some of you, I still have your Unit 3, and if you want them, you can take them, but it gets really messy. If you want to just wait, I'll get those back to you. You need to bring me any evidence if I've made errors in your grade, like Lauren found one and we already fixed it. Yeah, bro.
Up to what unit will be at the semester?
Up to 6 units.
Okay.
So the one that's currently being entered, 5 is halfway entered, and then 6, the one that you're taking now.
Will be the last one.
So your grade basically finishes that day. You can tack on the winter break extra credit and the final. But your grade will be complete at that point. After winter break, we've got like 13 days of school and then finals. Those 13 days will fall into the second semester. Yes?
So that extra credit for the book isn't going to be put in the semester?
It will be.
It will.
And then how do you do, like, when the next semester starts, do you, like, reset all the grades, or do they continue on with everything?
It's a separate grade. What else? No more grading questions? Vocab on 6.2, please. I think we're going to need pandemic and zoogenic and something else, right?
Emergent.
First, the one you already heard. Epidemic is a disease that is large scale, like a disease that a lot of people get. Pandemic is when it spreads to large areas of land. Usually pandemic means international. I don't know if there's like a singular definition, but it usually means international. So epidemics go pandemic when they cross national boundaries. Emergent diseases are new ones. They're like coming out or coming up. They're like a new disease. Like, whoa, this is emergent. Like, it's coming out of nowhere.
Is that in a specific area of the world?
What?
Is that in a specific area of the whole world?
Usually diseases come up in one area.
It's like Ebola and
Perfect examples, sure. Yeah, they usually come up in one area. Finally, zoogenic. If you break that down, you know, zoo like animals and genesis like the birth of things. Zoogenic diseases are diseases that arise from animal populations. Like everybody's worried that we're going to get a gnarly flu that is transmitted from bird populations or something. Technically, most diseases are zoogenic. In other words, most diseases show up in animals and then mutate to infect humans. Some people argue all disease is zoogenic, slim distinctions. Are there any other vocab terms? Yeah, bro.
Are we skipping 6.1?
Yeah, we're skipping 6.1. Thanks for asking. So let's do the study goals really quickly. Please look up. When humans are born, they're added to a population. When they die, they leave the population. Immigrants add to a population. Emigrant is the person who has left. So, please look up. These are positive, these are negative. In number 40, birth rate, death rate, immigration, emigration, 7 positive, 5 negative, means 2% growth. You know, which ones add a human, which ones remove a human.
I'll check that. Thanks.
Are there any questions about that part? And then rule of 70 is the thing for doubling time. Doubling time is not supposed to be fancy. Anything doubles over time if it's growing. Conceptualize this. Like if Jose is growing in weight, how long will it take me to double in weight? And 70 divided by the percentage is the doubling time. Yeah, bro?
Why 70?
You really want to know? Are you good at math? You ever heard of PERT?
Yeah.
ERT.
That one?
Yeah.
So,
It's not in the vocabulary.
you, doubling time would be this. That's how you would define doubling time. So if you solve for t, you have to take like natural log of 2. Right? You following? You get math? And so doubling time, that would be called the doubling time, right?
Yeah.
So doubling time equals 70-ish. It's actually 69.9987 or something, divided by growth rate and percentage. I didn't think I'd be able to get there, bro. Totally winged that. Last time I did math, I was much younger. Anybody else want to ask me anything about number 40?
So doubling time is 70 divided by growth rate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's called the rule of 70. This is the 4th unit in a row where we've done it, yes. Anybody else? Okay. 41 is 3 stars, but we're skipping it because I set aside a whole day for that, Tuesday next week. 42 is information in the book. Are there questions about the information in the book? '43 is about areas with the greatest and the lowest population growth. At about a time that people were curious about population growth, some dude named Brandt wanted to say who's above average and who's below average. So he found the human average population growth, and he was doing a really simple project. said, like, I wonder where growth is. I think he was working for the United Nations, but I could be mistaken. He was working for some international thing. And Mr. Brandt mapped out where population was growing below average and above average. You may notice a suspicious pattern here. White people don't do it very much. No, I'm just kidding. I didn't mean that.
Is the red growth?
Yeah, so the red's above average.
So isn't that like first world?
Yeah, so some of you may notice other patterns, like many of those blue nations were once called first world nations. That's a touchy terminology, just so you know. Yeah.
Why is like the bottom of South Africa?
Because that's the white part of Africa. Yeah, no, I mean, it's called South Africa. It's the apartheid nation. This was done during early apartheid, so that was then the only African nation governed by white people, exclusively by white people. Yeah. But it's the country that's called South Africa. That's South Africa. We're getting into some pretty interesting cultural landscape, and for me, cultural issues are really interesting, and I kind of shoot from the hip, and I say things that are potentially inflammatory or insensitive because I am a multicultural person. I am an immigrant from another country. I thrive in cultural conversation, and I hope I don't step on anybody's sensitivities. I'm not trying to be a jerk. But the funny thing about cultural stuff is when you start to press people's buttons, they think about it more. So I do actually consciously say inflammatory things, like white people don't do it as much. There is another way that you could think about this, though. That rich nations are not the ones that are growing very much, and poor nations are. You should know that, first of all, this is outdated. If you Wikipedia, you could get me the right date. Somebody have a phone out, maybe. But I think this was like 1960-something, 1970-something. It's been a long time. Somebody want to answer that for me? This is outdated. Technically, a couple of countries in the Persian Gulf have gone blue. South Africa, I believe, has gone red, and today maybe blue again, but I'm not certain. Brazil went blue for a while, and then I think Brazil, I don't know if Brazil's red today. I think Japan is like the bluest of the blue. Yeah. Japan and Italy are like the two bluest countries.
Well, purple's close.
Maybe more navy.
I think China today is probably blue. And I think they've been blue since the Red Revolution, roughly. But anyway, just so you know, this is kind of outdated and it was very simplistic. He was only interested in population issues. Sam, I love you because you do such good work, but I think that might be too loud for the building. I love you because you do such good work, but I think that might be too loud for here. Yeah. And do you think you could use a couple of cardboard pieces to bridge that little broken part at the top to slightly stabilize it, maybe? Thanks, homie. All right. When I say the rich and the poor countries, you might realize that's A, sort of an arbitrary way to discuss these things, and B, sort of a sloppy rubric, and that doesn't really sound very sciencey. And what do you mean by rich and poor, and how much money does it actually take, and like, don't I feel kind of poor? And there's all sorts of complications when I say rich and poor. So a better term that we often use is degrees of development. And by development, I mean things like this. If you can't read them, I'll point it out, but it's not necessarily worth memorizing because I think you understand what I mean by development. Stuff like crime level and political stability and women employment and GDP and average income and percentage of people with higher education and average range of education and like the standard of water pipes. That's a really good way to know if you live in a developed country. Like, can you turn on a faucet? Developed country. Access to water overall, like, are you drinking someone else's urine? Lesser developed nation. Amount of telephones or televisions or computers per person. You know that in Japan, the average cell phone ownership just went over 2 per human?
What? Must be a lot of drug dealers.
Yeah, right? Like, I got my bro phone and my hoe phone. Yeah, probably. And
Well, that's
I think the other thing is that there's like a lot of electronics turnover in Japan, because turnover is in like, you know, people buy new ones all the time. So it's like, this is my new one and that's my old one. I currently have 2 working cell phones.
Yeah.
Like, this was a free upgrade, so like I have my other one. Amount of healthcare, economic activity anyway. Stuff like this. And check it out. There's even a way to measure this scientifically called the Human Development Index. You've got to know that. That's vocabulary. I'm sorry that I didn't add that earlier. HDI, the Human Development Index. I wish that I remembered this better, but I think there's like 60 or 70 variables that are graded on a scale of 1 to 100 in this giant equation. And so to measure your Human Development Index, we look at a bunch of variables like how many people can read in your country, and like what percentage of your newborns survive to the age of 5, and how many of your women have access to voting, and whatever. And then we say that's their Human Development Index. There's a term. And check out this funny pattern. You can probably guess it's really connected to money. Check it out. Watch. Development money, 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 development money.
Yeah, you're going to kill us.
I can do it again.
Do it faster.
Development money, development money, development money. Oh, dang it.
Too fast.
What's the, why is like, is that Iceland or Greenland? It's gray?
No data.
No.
Well, nobody lives there.
There's a couple of places that are gray. Greenland and I believe Uzbekistan.
And Somalia. I love Uzbekistan.
North Korea.
Yeah, right. What are you talking about? There is no North Korea.
No one lives here.
North Korea like fucking together. Either they don't report, or like the scientists don't come back, or they don't let or they don't let you ask. Like, you know, hey North Korea, hello, hello. I know you're getting this message. They're like, stop looking at me.
You ask again, dude.
It's okay.
And I guess you probably understand why economic activity is related to development. All of those things that measure your development status cost money. Some of those are money. The rest are usually based on money. So you're either measuring money or what you do with money.
So water pipes are pretty expensive.
Yeah, you know, you don't get water pipes for free.
Yeah.
What? That was catchy. Yeah. There's a couple of slight exceptions, you know. So if you notice a couple of places, Like, anybody know what country that is? That Angola? Am I a racist? Whatever country that is, I'm such a racist. Please tell me that's Angola. It is! That's the best. I'm not a racist. No, I just, like, it's such a stereotype, you know? Like, hi, I'm a white guy that doesn't know African countries. All right. So look.
All African?
Yeah, exactly, the country of Africa. Okay, watch. You've got some countries, like Angola, that seem to have a lot of money, but are still really lesser developed. Anybody know why that could happen?
Corruption.
Yeah, that's like a couple of dudes got all that money. Yeah. You should Google the personal wealth of Angola leadership. It's pretty shocking.
You'll just see one guy.
Yeah. There's like those like $2 billion buried in the yard somewhere. Yeah. I don't know if that's true of Angola in particular, but that's the trend. Yeah, all that money is in a very small pool of hands, and so you'll notice that like Qatar and the United Arab Emirates and a couple of other those Persian Gulf nations have a whole bunch of economic activity, but not so much development. That's just like a few very powerful corporations that have a lot of oil wealth.
United Emirates.
Yeah, I don't know what their development color is, but let's check it out. On the HDI, you know, they're like not that developed.
It's like 2000.
Wait, what color means what?
Oh, the darker means more developed.
And this is the darker on the greens.
Darker green.
And then red is dark.
Red is the least developed, yeah.
It's your bed and rocks together.
Yeah, right, basically.
Reds.
Just so you know, the United States used to be really close to the top on the HDI. Like, the best we had, I think, was number 3. And, like, now we're, like, number 9. And, like, projections shows going, like, 11, 14, 17. Like,
What's the most developed?
I'm pretty sure that's been consistently one of the Scandinavian nations. The white guys! Yeah, the whitest white guys. That's basically how you find the most developed in life. They're see-through! Yeah, I'm gonna get so fired. Please don't get fired.
The whitest like that. Don't worry, you're being filmed.
Yeah, right. At least it's not on the internet or anything. Well, no, but seriously, like, jokes aside, most of the ways that we measure development, they've done a really good job of that. So, like, everybody has access to medical care. Like, everybody can read. And, like, women earn as much as men. Go figure. All right. And so, let's answer the tricky question, and then we'll figure out how to go from A to B. So here comes the tricky question. Why do the poor countries make more babies? Like, couldn't we say, you silly poor people, why do you make so many, like, why? Wouldn't they want less babies than poor? Yeah.
It could be like a cultural thing, like in India, where it's...
These are all cultural things. I want to know what's different in their cultures.
Some of them don't have access to like healthcare and birth control because it's not as developed, so they don't have that good of healthcare system.
Yeah, that's of the list of 5. That's number 2. Somebody else was over there. Yeah, third was it.
They keep trying until they get a boy.
So the son's preference is a very regional thing, but coincidentally, that also happens in wealthy nations. That's not necessarily a population inflator related to poverty. Like, son's preference is not poverty related. What is it about poverty?
Lack of knowledge about construction and also about what it's hard to find population.
A few separate parts. A, nobody makes population decisions when they're deciding to breed or not. Like, I don't think anybody, there's no mystery about population size. It's just not how we decide to breed. Very, 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 very few humans consider population impacts. That's not a poverty thing. And lack of knowledge about contraception may be a thing, but I'll put that as part of medical access. There's no mystery about why the baby's coming out of the vagina. Like, people understand what breeding does. Yeah?
A lot of really poor countries that are not empowered to make decisions and choose to have less children.
This is number one. Yeah. Number one is female disenfranchisement. And what that means is women are out of the institution. Like, women don't make the decision at all. Globally, I gotta tell you, girls your age would probably be on track for the second right now. Globally, women your age, like, you are way past average breeding age. You're rubbing against second baby age. You'd have one hanging on you, and you'd probably be some level of pregnancy as a global average at your age. Because remember, globally at your age, you got kicked out of the house when you flowered however many years ago, I don't need to know. When you can quote-unquote fend for yourself, then you're somebody else's problem. Mom and dad don't have to feed you anymore. And think about it, how will you fend for yourself? You're not going to go to school. You're not going to get a job. So you could either, like, go rogue and go be like some homeless person with no potential, or you could attach yourself to a man, and that is the end of your decision-making process. Then that man will use you as a semen receptacle. And so, as we said, with the limited access to medical options, this is what it means to be disenfranchised. You don't have the choice about your reproductive life. So number one was disenfranchisement. Number two was limited access to medicine. There's still a few others. What's different about poverty, yes?
Maybe that, like, a lot of the kids don't make it into adulthood, so they have to have more.
Yeah, that's number four. A lot of times, you just don't expect babies to make it. There's, like, low statistics. We call that the low survivorship effect. That's number four. Yes?
It's like economic stability for, like, the parents. Like, because when they get old, the kids will take care of them.
Well, the funny thing is, that's also common in wealthy nations. Like in the U.S., your degree of stability as an elder also depends on the number of children. So what's different about the poor? In poor nations, you need more children for stability, not necessarily for economics, but number five is something related to that. What's special about being poor? Why would you want more children around?
They take care of.
Yeah, it's called the labor effect. Number five is the labor effect. You need help on the farm, or help around the lumberyard, or help at home. You breed more laborers. And number three, I'm going to speed this up because I want to get somewhere. Poor nations have what's called an early age of first childbearing. That's a really key term. It's worth writing down in every word. Early age first childbearing. They get started earlier. That was number three. Early age of first childbearing was number three. Hey, no. I want to talk about the early age of first childbearing. I don't want to discuss your personal biology, but I think all of you understand that you are probably well past early fertility, right? Like, without details about your personal life. Everybody here could biologically have had children for a while now. The reason so many of you have not, without prying into your personal behaviors, is probably because you got other stuff on the table. There's something really particular about a poor country. Women your age, without school, without job, women your age are already family life. Just so you know, that's closely associated with wealth in all nations, including Scandinavia and the United States. The poor have less options, so why not start a family earlier? if school is out, like in the US, your chances of going to college are directly influential on the age at which you'll have your first child. You could probably figure that out in Santa Barbara. Your prospects of entering a career, that pretty much will decide, like, why not start? Like, most of you probably don't want a baby right now, because, you got a couple things you want to get out of the way. I'm going to guess something to do with school or job, right? So, disenfranchisement, limited access, age of first childbearing, survivorship, and the labor effect. No, I just repeated it. You mean, can I repeat my repetition? Can you take notes?
I'll take that as a no.
Take it as an F no, actually. Yeah. Okay. Please look up. There's this thing called the Logromo. The logistic growth model, the Logromo. And the Logromo says, populations grow until their environment can't support them anymore. In other words, populations grow logistically until carrying capacity limits that growth. And yes, K is for carrying capacity. It's kind of a funny thing about ecology. But humans have a very special secret. The Logromo doesn't apply to humans. Ultimately, it probably will, like some remote future maybe. But humans have not really been governed by the Logromo. Because watch. Where environmental conditions might have limited our population size, we figured out, like, living in caves and wearing insulation and stuff. And where food availability may have limited our population growth, we figured out, like, agriculture and stuff. And where crowding and disease may have limited our population growth, we figured out, like, medicine and germ theory and stuff. And where global food production may have limited our population growth, we figured out, like, the Green Revolution and fishing in the deep sea and stuff. Humans are the only species, in other words, that can affect their carrying capacity. All other organisms are victimized by their environment. We victimize our environment. When we reach the limit of what the environment can provide us, we just change that environment. Sooner or later, I think you understand there probably is a logical endpoint to that, right? Like, somewhere.
So basically, we're like hurting ourselves by being too good at being like animals.
Maybe, yeah. I see your points. Yeah.
So I guess just like some people are thinking that technology will just help us get through this, right?
Yeah, I mean, the funny thing is, all of this comes down to is, do you believe there must be a limit somewhere? Other people are like, no, we'll go to Mars. And like, yes, but how many planets are there? And they're like, oh, no, but we'll keep finding more planets. And like, literally, do you think technology can push K forever? Is there infinity or not? Anybody else want to talk 44? Because I want to talk 45, which is 3 stars, and it's over here. This is a big deal. You saw this in the movie, so maybe you already know why it's a big deal. How do we go from red to blue? Just in case, I mean, how many of you know where Argentina is on that map? Okay. South America is the triangle pizza slice below North America. If you're on the Florida side of the United States, stay on the Florida side of South America. The big diamond wedge, The big thing in South America, that's Brazil. And Argentina's on the bottom on that side. I'll show you Argentina. Check it out. This is my motherland. I was born right at the tip of that index finger. That's where I come from.
What's the southernmost point?
It depends who you ask. Yeah, no, really. Like, Argentina says it's them, and Chile says it's them. Depends who you ask. Shut up. And there's also the distinction about colonies on ice and South Pole. Like, Argentina claims a wedge of the South Pole, and the rest of the world is like, Argentina claims these couple of islands in the middle of the Atlantic, and if you go there, they have like a big British flag. Argentina's like, no, those are ours, bro. They're like, we're called the Falklands. That's an English word. And Argentina's like, no, those are called the Malvinas, right? Okay. All right. We don't say it right. Just say it. Okay. Argentina's been red for a long time, and we've been trying to be blue for a long time. If you ask Argentinians, most Argentinians will say, oh, yeah, no, we're red. And then if you use the Human Development Index, it's like, yeah, we're red. And then you talk to like politicians and business people, and they're like, oh no, we're blue. We're totally blue. Totally blue. Yeah. Blue. The process of going from red to blue, please look up, is called demographic transition. You go from being a crappy country to being a sweet-ass country. And nobody likes to use those terms, crappy and sweet-ass. So what do we call these countries? Please look up. Pre-developed, to developed, or less developed to most developed. We could call these developing, early development, and late development. Some people call these transitional countries. And listen very carefully. During the Cold War, there was this terminology called the Third World, Second World, and First World. That originally meant, this is not just esoteric, you must know this. The Third World historically meant countries that didn't have nuclear technology. The First World meant countries that had nuclear armament. And the Second World was countries that were working on nuclear technology. And because that has a lot to do with education and quality of life and other stuff, these countries were often called Third World as a development measure and First World as a development measure. Just so you know, Third World, First World for development is kind of a sloppy fit. Political science nerds don't use that language. Somebody remind me, we had finished talking about the names of the countries. Here, Gary.
Austin 65, right?
Over there.
Yeah. Well, I'm not.
Yeah, that's right.